Baba Manya and the Devils Part 1, A Stroke of Luck. Last week, something quite significant happened to a rather lonely old pensioner who had spent her entire life working at a military factory. An elderly woman met some real-life devils. Surprisingly, the devils turned out to be rather sweet creatures. Yes, they did have horns, hooves, pig snouts, and long tails, but there were some unfortunate inaccuracies. The devils from classic fairy tales and cartoons were usually painted pitch black, which was a regrettable mistake. In reality, the forces of evil came in all shades of existing colors. In fact, there were blue, red, purple, and even white devils. They were all great fellows and left a striking impression. Baba Manya was proud of this friendship, but she kept certain intimate details of their interactions to herself, fearing her neighbors might not understand. Her acquaintance with these otherworldly beings occurred by a stroke of luck. It all started when the pension Baba Manya received for the first time in years of poverty did not cover all her utility bills. The financial balance, quite disgustingly, shifted into the negative. Baba Manya spread her pension money out on the table. She gently stroked the dirty banknotes with her hands, remembering her husband who had disappeared many years ago on a business trip. If only he could see her from the other side now. Across from her lay payment slips, adorned with advertisements and pleas to donate money to a church. She could part with all her money any day, starting from tomorrow. Oddly enough, Baba Manya didn't feel like paying at all. Honestly, what was the difference between starving to death or being held accountable for non-payment? It wasn't like one was sweeter than the other. She suddenly remembered her old foreman, who she started working for when she was still very young. He would boldly pinch her behind and whisper astonishing things. The foreman convincingly promised the young girl a prosperous life under communism, saying there would be no money at all and everything would be completely free. The young Manya believed the older man back then, but despite her respect for him, she would smack his hands away and move far back. Unfortunately, communism never came, but everything else, strangely enough, did. Baba Manya even had a word for the crazy reality she was living in, and that word was surprisingly simple: shit. In the end, the old lady decided to drink away the money and not pay for utilities at all. After all, when faced with two evils, one should choose the lesser, and therefore the kinder one. Baba Manya dashed to the store and bought several crates of vodka. A young loader helped carry her valuable cargo to her apartment, and after receiving a tip, asked her a parting question. "Granny, why do you need so much booze?" The old lady smiled. "I'm getting married soon, sonny. Come to the registry office. You can be a witness." The guy didn't get the joke at first and stood there, dumbfounded, but then he figured it out and burst into laughter. The first bottle of vodka went down her throat like Halley's Comet, leaving behind a pleasant feeling of cheerfulness and the desire to chat, while the second bottle went slower, requiring long pauses and watching the news on TV. The most surprising thing was that the news anchor on the screen gradually started talking directly to Baba Manya. No, of course, he didn't answer all the questions she asked, but he was definitely signaling to her with his eyebrows and quick nose movements. It was captivating. Several times Baba Manya blacked out and lost the thread of events. Eventually, she realized that if she drank a shot every time she woke up, the intoxication would remain linear and wouldn't require more large doses. This was how she kept drinking for several days straight, significantly conserving her stock of alcohol. By the end of the second week, the devils came to visit her, and they didn't come one by one, but all at once. The most handsome devil, a lovely golden color, played the guitar and sang the old song, "On the Hills of Manchuria," with a velvety baritone. Baba Manya picked him up, since he was about the size of a cat, and began to waltz with him, spinning endlessly in the middle of her apartment. The other devils encouraged the dancing pair with applause and made very saucy compliments. After an hour, neighbors downstairs started shouting and hammering at the plumbing pipes. Through the open balcony came their furious cries, "Who the hell is stomping around at midnight? Our plaster is falling off, damn it." But Baba Manya didn't care anymore. She kept dancing and gave a big middle finger to their primitive wishes. Soon enough, the devils joined hands and formed a round dance. They moved smoothly around the couple, gracefully lifting one hoof and then the other. By 4 in the morning, all the neighbors near the old lady's apartment were banging on the walls with heavy objects and screaming wildly. Even the ex-convict Vasya, who had just been released from the city jail last week, grabbed a cleaver and angrily approached her door. Baba Manya looked through the peephole and then let all the devils take a look. The devils carefully examined the ex-con and advised her not to open the door. She sided with her dear guests and of course didn't open it. Neighbor Vasya was shaking and foaming at the mouth. He slashed at the door with swift blows of his cleaver, shouting, "You old hag, stop it right now, I can't sleep!" The devils laughed merrily and whispered in Baba Manya's ear, "This bastard is lying through his teeth. Don't believe him. His place is under the bunk, next to the toilet bucket." After the vodka ran out, the devils left the old lady's apartment. Silence settled deafeningly over the space around her. It wasn't fair. For the first time in her life, Baba Manya had found friends with similar interests. More than that, they had a great time together. As a merry band, they played hide-and-seek, dominoes, solved charades, and sang raunchy folk songs in chorus. During this time, the police came by several times and knocked loudly on the door, but the devils again strongly advised her not to open it, and naturally she didn't. From somewhere below, a hysterical woman regularly screamed, "Take this mad woman to the asylum." Eventually, an ambulance came and took the screamer away. They carried her out on a stretcher and quickly stuffed her into the vehicle. Indeed, a lot of strange and remarkable events had taken place at the address of a very lonely pensioner. The old woman managed to live without the demons for only a few days. Suffering from a terrible headache, she dragged herself to the store and borrowed a few bottles of liquor against her future pension. The familiar shopkeeper shook her head in disapproval. "You're going to ruin yourself, Manya. Listen to what people are saying about you." But the old woman had long stopped caring about her neighbors and their gossip. She quickly made her way home, locking the door behind her with every lock she had. The demons appeared even faster this time. The cheap alcohol was more than enough to instantly summon her old friends. The infernal creatures emerged from the space surrounding the pensioner, dazzling her with their mystical charm and beauty. The old woman kissed each demon individually, and she kissed the golden one twice, because he had earned it during their last encounter. This time, the demons did not come empty-handed. In her bedroom stood a sled adorned with pillows, pink ribbons, and large bows. 2 representatives of hell, elegantly harnessed to the sled, stomped their hooves on the floor, eager to move. The old woman felt a blush rise to her cheeks and tears welled up in her eyes. "Is this all just for me?" The demons nodded enthusiastically. The golden demon began to sing the Wanderer's aria and elegantly led the old woman to the sled, pouring her a glass of champagne and seating her properly on the numerous silk cushions. Indeed, sitting on the cushions was very comfortable and pleasant. The old woman drank her champagne in one gulp and asked for more, which was, of course, promptly fulfilled. The sled began to move subtly and then glided smoothly across the concrete floor of her apartment. The demonic company, along with the old woman, left the house through an old chimney. The narrow space of the chimney significantly accelerated their journey. Upon exiting the sooty chimney, the sled was clearly moving faster than the speed of sound, approaching the speed of light. The old woman was racing toward the stars, screaming loudly from the overwhelming emotions. Strangely enough, even in space, she could still hear the shouts of her annoying neighbors. The blue demon gently brought his snout close to the old woman's face and whispered hotly, "Don't pay attention to those idiots. They don't understand what real drive is." Upon leaving space, they unexpectedly entered a blue sea. It was endless, with small sandy islands stretching to the horizon, lifting the traveler's spirits. The old woman asked, "Can I go into the sea? I've never seen it for real, only in black and white pictures." The blue demon once again leaned toward the old woman's ear and whispered, "You can do anything, just say the word." The old woman blushed and cheerfully commanded, "Let's land on that island, I'm going for a swim." The sled immediately descended. The islands were covered with beautiful palm trees, though oddly, all of them were purple. The old woman noted to herself that the color suited the plants well. The pensioner carefully stepped into the warm sea, feeling the soft sand beneath her feet, and immediately began swimming, powerfully pushing off the shallow bottom. The demons also jumped in after her, diving and throwing red jellyfish at each other. Grandma Manya swam beautifully, using the breaststroke, and joyfully watched the corals below. She felt good, perhaps better than she ever had in her bleak life. She shouted into the vastness, "What's the name of this sea?" The demons chorused in response, "This is the Sea of Devils. Devils are not us, they are the ones inside you. Do you want to see your inner devil? Dive as deep as you can." Curiosity piqued, the old woman dove. Strangely, she didn't need air at all. At the bottom, she saw a deformed shell, heavily covered with sand. Inside was a hermit crab nervously guarding its primitive entrance. The old woman suddenly realized that this was her devil, weak and defenseless. She felt sad, quickly realizing that she had never truly lived. She sent a few bubbles from her mouth toward the crab and shot up to the surface. She was greeted by her old demonic company and was spun around in a fast-paced dance. The demons asked, "What do you want, old woman? What do you need? Just say it." The pensioner finally decided and bravely wished, "I want my own house with several rooms, a basement, an attic, and space for Japanese sewing machines." The demons laughed, "That's not enough, lady. Wish for more." The old woman replied, "I want a real ship with a captain. He should wear a white cap and regularly hit on me." The demons once again frolicked and laughed around her. "Yes, yes, old woman. That's exactly what you need. Be brave. Forget the limits." The demons did not deceive her. Grandma Manya finally saw her house on the shore. It suddenly appeared around the nearest bend of the coastline. White marble and pink tuff formed its intricate facade. Inside the mansion, it was delightful. Carpets on the floor and freshly painted walls brought a variety of colors and added a mystical hue to the space. The demons whispered, "Decide, old woman, once and for all, what you really need and tell us. We will fulfill it all." They tempted the pensioner. "Forget modesty. Wish for the impossible, because you've long deserved it all." Indeed, soon the house had everything. This everything included photographs of all existing relatives, a huge bed, Chinese silk bedding embroidered with pheasants, a rocking chair, 3 ficus trees, 6 wrought iron chests full of treasures, an Italian fridge for alcohol, and a premium wine cellar with a built-in air vent. Every morning, Grandma Manya went for a swim in the sea. Almost immediately, pink dolphins would swim up to her, happily twirling her around in the water. After her sea routine, it was inevitably time for food and drink tasting. Breakfast was typically exquisite and began naturally with 15 varieties of coffee and pastries with cream. Lunch was always delightful, starting with a vitamin salad. The day usually ended with fine wines and blue cheese. The old woman devoured the cheese like a walrus, loudly smacking her lips with pleasure. She went to bed early, right after the first of the 3 suns left the wondrous sky. At one point, she even had an intriguing thought that perhaps this was the mysterious communism she had heard of. Perhaps she was living in it right now. Her lecherous foreman at the wartime factory was right after all. Then again, he too regularly drank on the job. She had seen an empty bottle in his locker more than once. She should have joined the party immediately during her factory training and started drinking. And who knows, she might have long since been enjoying this good communist life.